Hi everyone, it's Rena. So this video is if you have your natal Venus in conjunction with Black Moon Lilith, the asteroid that is associated with certain shadow elements when it comes to buried aspects of yourself, things that are true for you or that you identify as part of you, but you feel like you can't express them. Maybe they feel kind of taboo to you. And this can include things that you do or that you want to do. And also the issue, and this is kind of that feminine aspect of being one's own person and not having to be submissive. And it's it gets a little bit tricky because how do men express this? It might be, I think I have read where they say things about the man, well, maybe they're attracted to a woman who has these qualities or whatever. I can't remember if I saw something that was directed specifically towards men. The things I have read recently are just kind of across the board, and they're not specifying a gender for the information. But, we have to remember that men are not all heterosexual, and men are also sometimes more in touch with their feminine side than their female counterparts. So you can't generalize in that way. A lot of times there might be men who would definitely identify with some of these themes. And in society, some of I would say the taboos for men are like being very vulnerable, crying, or expressing fear, anything that makes a man look like he's not completely confident in his strength 100%. And for women, this can be about their feelings towards someone, because women tend to be more open when it comes to emotions, and that includes falling in love. However, because of that, they can also get their heart stomped on sometimes because they do put themselves out there. So anyway, Venus can be our relationships. It don't always have to be our with our significant other. They can be even platonic relationships. And Venus is associated with pleasure. So when you have that meeting with Black Moon Lilith, that's where that taboo can come in. And of course, that can involve things like cultural conditioning, religious, and sometimes those two, culture and religion, are one and the same. And sometimes, yeah, well, I was going to say different time periods or different generations, but that's kind of like cultural conditioning, I suppose, too. Because the younger generation's kind of freaky, it seems like. And they don't seem to be that, kind of embarrassed to talk about it. I'm a little bit nosy, I suppose you could say. And one time I just happened to be sitting in an outdoor cafe type of area, and I heard these other people like that were at one table talking, and they were, younger than I was. I assume they were millennials, or even maybe they were Gen Z. I don't know. But they were just talking about, oh yeah, they had this threesome and da da da, like it was no big deal. So anyway, so that's when we talk about values, we're talking about what is important to the individual. And I don't really like to bring morality. I think when we talk about values, it's more about what is important to a person versus what is morally correct. That word can go either way, and I don't think that's what they mean when they talk about values. It's what do you put energy into, because Venus rules Libra, but it also rules Taurus, and Taurus is the second house, which deals with your money, your possessions, but also your self-esteem. So it's what what has value in your life. And your self-value is your self-esteem. And so what people deem important is their values, and Venus can be about that, but they could have some things that are important to them that are quite unusual, that kind of deviate from the norm. And this is where the Black Moon Lilith influence comes in. So people have characterized Black Moon Lilith as being kind of like Plutonian. And, I definitely can see that. And so we can make the case that when Venus is in conjunction with Black Moon Lilith, that it's like Venus in conjunction with Pluto. And I have done videos on the conjunction as well as the hard angles. And I think I might have done the friendly angles, not sure, but those different aspects. And I even thought before I pressed record on this video, like, oh wow, because I already did the square and opposition, maybe I should have included the conjunction with it, but I am glad I didn't, because I think there are going to be some slight differences. There are going to be general themes, and if somebody did have a conjunction between Venus and Pluto, there might be some similarities there as well. Or if you have Venus in Scorpio, there could be some of those things, or Venus in the 8th house in particular. And don't forget that this is just one influence, and it can get modified by the sign or signs that the conjunction is in. For instance, let's say that this is a conjunction with Gemini, with Venus in Gemini and Venus in Black Moon Lilith. That's going to be lighter, because Gemini is not a possessive sign, not a heavy sign, and it's an air sign, so it kind of stays above the fray. Now, what if this conjunction is with Scorpio? Okay, well, my sympathies to you. That's really something. Or if this conjunction is in the 8th house. Okay. Well, anyway, so I'm going to just talk about a few things. So with this conjunction, this can be about you learning how to kind of stand in your power, step into your power in relationships. One of the things that can be quite fraught with danger when it comes to relationships is that they can put people in a vulnerable place, especially if they have a history of giving away their power. Some people are very adept at, kind of being a mover and shaker in their professional life, and then when they're behind closed doors, they kind of just become very submissive. And usually my feeling is that when they were growing up, they didn't feel loved, and they're afraid of losing that other person. So they basically will do what that person wants. And that if that other person is, somebody who exploits or, manipulates whatever, that can be very destructive, a destructive relationship. And so this can be what we would call the saving grace. If there are other things going on in the chart that indicate that the person tends to abdicate responsibility for um, their not only their own actions, but the need to assert themselves. Because some people, it's like a form of learned helplessness. And I'm not just talking about in this situation, but in any situation where they almost feel like they can't ask for what they want, and that they're going to be dominated by other people. There are people like that who just completely feel powerless. And this could be kind of the starting point. And unfortunately, for some people, it takes one or more disastrous relationships to be able to see how imperative it is not to give away your power, especially early on. Like, don't, and that does not mean that you're going around, with an attitude and you're uncooperative and you're trying to get your own way. No, it's just kind of like a balance. This can give the person a lot of charisma that attracts others to them. And, when I was doing the version of this combination with the hard angles, I was talking about the femme fatale. And of course, you could say the male version of that is like the Lothario, the man who is like this. This can be about seduction, I feel. And I didn't even see that word when I was looking online for kind of talking points. And I really think this could be somebody who, the feminine version would be the seductress, or the man is the seducer. And this is where the power issue comes in, because there may be some people who, because of earlier on, if they were the victims of abuse, let's just put it out there, like, for instance, sexual abuse. A woman who's been the victim of sexual abuse is going to look to turn the tables and be the one who is in that. Well, and I'm not saying this would happen all the time, but for some women, that's how they feel empowered, by turning the tables, and they become the one who holds the power in that situation. And so this could be, and this is, I feel like because of this, that this could even involve somebody in doing sex work of some kind, whether it's dancing or porn or prostitution, and I haven't seen any kind of echoing of that in what I've been looking online, but that's just my guess, because that's how Venus and Pluto can be. And but it, obviously that's not going to be the case for all people. It can be the case for people who maybe have felt powerless, but still wanted that admiration. Because when you put yourself on stage, or when you're putting yourself as an object of desire, that's, in a way, you could say that's a form of manipulation. And manipulation exists to hold on to power. That's why people manipulate, so that they can have the upper hand in that one-on-one encounter. And so I feel like manipulation can be in some cases going on with this combination. Yeah, it could occur with the person that you are with. Maybe you're not manipulating, maybe they are, and you are attracting this because of your beliefs. But I think even in that case, it's until you learn and start to step into your power, and then maybe that goes away. Because definitely there can be, with couples, there can be power struggles. And I feel like because Venus can be money, that money can come into the equation in some way. That's why I mentioned sex work, because, or even stripping and stuff like that, because there is a monetization of sex when you're talking about sex work. So that's the Venus, and the taboo is the black moon Lilith. But this, in general, the person's sexuality can be quite powerful, but I don't know that in all cases. I think that it is something that they embrace. I will say that, because when I was, for instance, when I was doing the square, it was like the frustration of like, how do you kind of integrate that desire with your belief of what love is about, and not think of it as something, that is sullying love, or, if the person has a lot of hang-ups. But yeah, I think that there probably is overtly sexual type of demeanor. And, it depends on the individual if they're able to kind of not, make it so that it's, front and center completely when they're dealing with another person, because then it could lead to one-dimensional relationships. And that person, because they do have a sexual demeanor or nature, that they do have that innately as part of themselves. So they may not realize that it is excessive in some cases. And, the need to be independent can be also front and center, but you could find that you have a tendency to get into relationships where there is a lot of intensity. But like Pluto, the function of Pluto is to transform. That's how you can alchemize these parts of yourself that maybe still need some work, and that other person can help with that. And this also involves being able to appear vulnerable, where, and I think, again, the theme can be within you, but it can also be within that other person. So maybe because you're afraid to be vulnerable, you tend to make a beeline towards people who also have that issue. And then it's like you're both struggling with, being afraid to bare your soul. And there's a term for it when two people have the same, oh, they call it like trauma bonding, when two people are struggling with the same issues. Like, for instance, if they both grew up with having, physical abuse, and so they have a tendency to be very sensitive to anything that, they're very like kind of like they flinch every time somebody gets angry and things like that. But in a way, sometimes that can mean that their weaknesses, sometimes it's good for one person to be strong where another person has that vulnerability. And then if you have the same weaknesses, that can be very challenging. But by the same token, you can have compassion for one another because you know how the other one feels. So it's you might attract that in the other person too, or maybe you attract somebody who's very vulnerable and open, and you think that they are the weak one, and maybe you think that you have the upper hand when you really don't. So that could be very interesting. But it's all about healing, isn't it? And I think that this combination is very powerful at the end of the day, in spite of some of the challenges. And you could attract somebody who has a very transformative effect on you. So that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.